Hello there, one and all, and welcome to episode 304 of Love at First Scent with me, Persolaise, coming to you live from YouTube. Thank you very much for tuning in, whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording. If you haven't already, let's try that again. If you have not already subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so. And if you would like to support my work, you can find information on how you can do that by following the link to Ko-fi in the video description below. So, single perfume review episode, this one. As you can see here, we're going to be doing something that I think we can still say is newish. It's certainly from this year, from the brand Parle de Parfum. This is their latest release called Wake Up World. We need to say, though, that the first comment for this broadcast goes to Rich Mitch, who says hello. Natalia is here as well. Joe M68 says hello again. You're all very welcome, all of you. I still want to know if there is somebody watching live from Australia, because this is a more Australian-friendly or Australia-friendly time slot that we have chosen. So somebody needs to say hello from somewhere in Australia. Joe says good morning from the Netherlands. Woozy says hi again. Natasha says hello from the queue for the Isle of Wight ferry. That's amazing. Which side? That must mean that you're basically just down the road from where I am. Are you on the Isle of Wight or are you on the Portsmouth side? Please do it more often for us Australians, says Woozy. Oh, Woozy, sorry, I forgot that you were amongst that group. Bonjour from Paris, says Chang. In a few days, I will work in Nice. Ah, so is that a new job? Congratulations to you, Chang. Natasha says Lymington. Oh, I didn't even know ferries were known in the town of Lymington. Sorry, that's really nasty of me. Okay, well then you're not down the road from me because I'm much closer to Portsmouth. Okay. Right. After that little amusing aside, Parle de Parfum, a brand that was set up a few years ago now. How long has it been around now? 5 years, 6 years, something like that, by Benjamin Almairac and his brother, who for the purposes of this episode is going to have to remain nameless because his name has completely escaped me. Somebody perhaps can help me out. And also their father, who is none other than the legendary Michel Almairac, creator of some of the most successful scents of all time. And they got together and decided to create this brand called Parle de Parfum. I think they arrived with quite a splash. Their initial salvo was quite impressive because they managed to, how can I put it? They managed to somehow retain a spirit of independence whilst being quite accessible. So, for instance, in the UK, they're available in very mainstreamy outlets such as Selfridges and Les Senteurs, so they're not completely underground. If you go to France, you find them at Galeries Lafayette. I believe they're in the refurbed Samaritan store in Paris. So they are around. They are in big name shops, and they certainly used to have their own boutique in Paris as well. I believe they probably still do. One reason why the brand will always have a special place in my heart is that Michel Almairac effectively brought back his own Gucci pour homme from the Tom Ford days and put it into a scent for the brand called Papyrus Oud. Papyrus Oud or Oud Papyrus, one way around. Some of the others, I think, maybe for me have been a little bit too cardboard cutout-ish, but I guess the brand has to do what it needs to do in order to survive, and they have got some great scents. Somebody mentioned Cedar Woodpecker, Milky Musk. Their Oris Tattoo has got a lot of fans, and it's a brand, I think, where you can always see, whether you like the scents or not, you can always see the thought, the thread of thought, the kind of intellectual thread or concept that has led Michel Almairac to create some of the scents. So there was one which came out, was it last year or 2 years ago, that was meant to have a kind of pineapple-y feel to it. Was it the Mile High Club? I wasn't a huge fan of that one. Then they also did a lavender one, I think, which is a kind of Provençal one, which to my nose was maybe a little bit too harsh. But in each of those cases, you could at least see what it was that they were trying to do and where they were going, and what the heritage of the scents was, and the background, the context of the scents. Andre says, I like Papyrus Oud and Woody Perfecto by this house. Shimon, okay, Shimon, you're basically kind of, I think, doing the review here, because you're pretty much saying what I'm going to say, except that maybe I think our tastes on whether we like it or not differs. Because Shimon says, reminded me of the perfumes from my teenage years, the 90s. Guess I hate the 90s comeback. Hashtag, what's the hashtag? Never wear the same trends again. Yes, that's I think nearly always very good advice. If you haven't worn a particular trend when it was first around, then okay, you can wear it. But if it's coming around and you remember it the first time it came around or the second time it came around, you're probably in the age group that should avoid it. I think it's probably good advice. But so we've kind of basically established that this is a bit of a 90s throwback. I actually wrote about this over on Persolaise.com a few weeks ago in a Skin Time post, but I wanted to do a video on it because I do think it's interesting, and I took it away with me over the summer and I did wear it quite a bit. So I think you can see where this review is going in the sense of whether I like this scent or not, but maybe with some reservations. So let us have a spray. So just to say again, this is called Wake Up World, and it's from Parle de Parfum, and it's composed by Michel Almairac, who also composed a scent that a lot of you may remember called Minotaur or Minotaur for Paloma Picasso, which was released in 1992. And if you were a fan of Minotaur, and I wore Minotaur just endlessly, then when you smell this, you may find yourself taken back pretty instantly to 1992 and wearing Minotaur. Just re-smelling it again now. The thing is, I do have a bottle of Minotaur, but I have a current-ish bottle of Minotaur because it is still available. And I think it's probably been watered down over the years. It's probably well, lost some of lost the Minotaur's horns, right? It's probably not as Minotaurish. It's a mini tour. There you go. So I you know, when I first smelt Wake Up World, I was immediately taken back to the early 90s. but I you know, I would have to have an original bottle of Minotaur to really make a proper side-by-side comparison. I can get a vintage Minotaur if you're so inclined, says Rich. Why am I not surprised? Well, we can talk about that later. Thank you very much for mentioning that, Rich. That's very, very kind. But actually, that raises an important issue as well. Because smelling old bottles, as in bottles that have been around, you know, for 20 years, 30 years, whatever, you're also not going to get the same effect as you did if you had sprayed that same bottle in the early 90s, because this stuff ages no matter how it's stored, whether it's stored in the dark, in the fridge, it does age. Some people would say it improves, but some people would say it doesn't. I think it depends on the material. So yes, Rich, we could have a chat perhaps about getting some vintage Minotaur, but even that is not going to be a truly scientific side-by-side comparison, because it will be a Minotaur that presumably is at least 20 years old, and so that will have had its effect on the juice. Anyway, what is the smell of Minotaur? Well, Minotaur is in many ways quite a kind of late 80s masculine scent, even though it was released in 1992, in the sense that it contains a very, very generous dose of the material dihydromercenol, which was the kind of signature material of a lot of 80s masculine scents. If you want to get a really strong sense of what dihydromercenol smells like, just smell Dracar Noir from Guy Laroche. That makes it's got a huge dihydromercenol dose. It's a fantastic material, but very often overused, as a lot of fantastic materials are. It absolutely has a place in the perfumer's palette. So how does it smell? I've always struggled to describe dihydromercenol, because to me, it's always been reminiscent of glass, which is kind of an idiotic thing to say because glass doesn't have a smell, but it's got a very, very light reflecting glass-like transparent quality to it. So if you can somehow in your mind mix up the concept of really, really clear light reflecting glass, and then imagine that the glass is actually made of wood, then you may be getting some sense of what dihydromercenol smells like, because it's got a woody facet to it. It's got a very, very definite lavendery, fake fougere type facet to it, but it's also extremely luminous. And I guess that's why it was so useful in masculine perfumery, because those are some of the qualities that you want in a masculine scent. That those are some of the boxes that you want to tick. Pierre Bourdon's favorite material, says Woozy. I think you're right. But it isn't just that. What you also get, which I think is what takes us in the territory of Minotaur, is a green apple note, quite a sort of sharp, tart, biting green apple note at the top, and then a suggestion of a kind of sweet, orangey, lemony feel, maybe something juicy, berryish at the top as well, maybe something rose-like in the middle. And even as I'm smelling it now, and also quite a surprisingly sweet, vanillic, ambery base. There's something quite delicious about it, actually, smelling it on paper. Maybe it's the combination of that tart apple with the vanillic base. So I smelt it and I thought, oh my goodness, in the same way that he brought back Gucci pour Homme, he's now also brought back Minotaur. But to my nose, the big difference here, which is, I guess, what he felt he had to do in order to make it fit for a 21st century audience, or what people consider a 21st century audience to want, is that there is quite a hefty dose of woody ambers in this one. And I think maybe the woody ambers have been overplayed by just a touch. They do seem to come out a little bit more prominently on skin. And so when I wore it over the summer, I really enjoyed the opening. I enjoyed the initial stages of the development. And then those woody ambery, spiky, harsh woods would start making their appearance felt just a bit. Okay, don't get me wrong. This is not a woody amber bomb, but I think that's what takes it away from the 90s. And brings it more into 2022 territory. Having said that, it would be fascinating to get Michel Almairac on here to ask him how the formulas differ, because perhaps he'd turn around and say that actually there isn't a huge amount of difference between them after all. Incidentally, Benjamin Almairac very kindly did an interview with us a couple of years ago, so if you search for that, you should be able to find it. What does the brand say about it? Because what I don't understand is why it's called Wake Up World. And so let's see if this illuminates things a bit more. A perfume in which you perceive a constant evolution without the theme changing completely. However, there is quite a clear development, especially in the first few seconds, which are particularly citrusy. I would say, this is Michel Almairac's words, that after spraying, it's important to wait for the fragrance to develop for at least a minute before smelling the test strip. You can consider it a unisex fragrance, even if it is a bit more masculine. As a fragrance, the first spray is an explosion that blows right in our faces, along the lines of, hurry up, wake up, something is going wrong in the system. Okay. As a more global message, it's clearly a denunciation of the global marketing system that makes people buy anything and everything, mainly based on what we're told, but not based on reality. Okay, well, I think we can make of the name what we will. I like the cheekiness of the irony of the idea that a perfume that calls itself Wake Up World is kind of saying you need to look to the past because things were better in the past, as opposed to Wake Up World and look to the future. I don't know. It's interesting. What are you saying? Rich Mitch says, I think if you get bottom-heavy perfumes, then vintages are definitely worth looking into. If you're looking into top-heavy, cologne-esque perfumes, not so much. Yeah, that's probably a good point, because the top notes tend to go off a bit more, whereas the bottom notes can actually improve with age. Gian says, agreed, though Tomboy Neroli does have some evolution. Unfortunately, I think that one just isn't very good. Sorry, do you mean this one or Tomboy Neroli? The number is the infinity symbol, says Woozy. Yes. Now this is kind of interesting. There you go. You can see the infinity symbol there. All of the other Parle-moi de Parfum releases have a number after the name, and unless I'm mistaken, the number is meant to represent the number of modifications that the formula went through before they settled on the final version. And so is this an infinite number of modifications? And is that Michel Almairac's comment on the fact that he's been working on this theme since forever, and so he couldn't possibly say how many modifications he has done. I actually need to get in touch with the brand and ask them, don't I? Let's give one of the final words to Shimon here. Besides my personal feeling, it is a well-made perfume, says Shimon. It's just my personal perception. A name that would be more fitting would be "You Must Remember This." Yeah, you could give that name to a lot of perfumes, though, couldn't you? So, thumbs up from me. It raises all sorts of questions about how much originality we want from our perfumers and from our brands. I think in this particular case, I'm willing to park that question to the side a tiny bit, because we no longer have the original in its original form, because Minotaur isn't quite what it used to be. So I guess because of that, we can say, okay, fine, because the original's not quite there, Michel Almairac is justified in giving us this one. Had the original been quite the same and then he decided to do this for his own brand, that would have been odd. But then I suppose he probably wouldn't even have done that. So maybe it's a completely academic question. But yes, thumbs up from me, with that slight reservation about the ambery woods in the base. But it does have an awakening quality to it, thanks to that apple note. And sometimes it's nice to be reminded of the past. I don't know. I think maybe sometimes we need to. This is kind of looking at the past and trying to draw some optimism for it to head into the future, which I guess can't be a bad thing. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this one. And if you are sticking around for the lives, we will come back with one more video where we will be looking at an entire perfume collection, a sort of sub-collection from a big-ish brand. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this one. I need to wake my mouse up. This mouse keeps going to sleep all the time. Right, see you soon. Take care. Bye.